Hey guys, Evan here. How you all doing today? So guys, today in this video we're going to be going over how to defeat a rogue in Wars of Draenor. Now there is a few tips and tricks that I will get into in the video to show you guys what I do versus a rogue. Today guys, we'll be going over my spec, glyphs, and I'm going to be showing 3 duels in the end of the video. I'm going to be going over 2 duels for wins and showing you guys what I did well, and then we're going 1 duel where I'll show you guys what I did wrong and how I could have improved and what I could have done to prevent that loss. Now, in general, rogues are definitely hard to defeat, especially combat rogues, since it's taught me that well. But yeah, rogues are generally a tough spot, but the best way to defeat a rogue is to make sure you keep your bleed on the target, and make sure you use Bladestorm to prevent any abilities getting on top of you like a kidney shot or anything like that, as well as using your fear at the right moments to keep yourself alive, and also using Die by the Sword when you have a bleed on to force the blind on a rogue, which would then mean when the blind drops off, they will have to reopen because you will have the bleed still on them, and this is a good way to keep yourself alive. Now, we're going to get straight into the specs here and the glyphs. Okay, so first up we're going to go over the specs versus rogues. Now, it really depends on what kind of rogue you're fighting, whether you spec for certain things. For instance, if you're fighting a combat rogue, you want to spec for Shockwave because they're going to be spec for Shadow Reflection, and if you're fighting a Assassination and Subtlety rogue, you're going to want to spec for Stormbolt. Now, we're going to go over the talents in general. Warbringer is a must versus rogues because of the fact that Warbringer is an extra stun on the target. Most of the time rogues generally won't try to kite you, and if they do, you always have your bleeds and also your heroic throw just in case to keep them in combat. Now, you would use your Warbringer as an extra stun during their evasions to keep them from doing extra damage to you basically. The next talent you want to use is a Rage Regen. The next one will be Sudden Death, and the reason you don't use Slam or Taste for Blood is because Sudden Death is extra damage on top of your Rage, and Slam pretty much does a little bit more damage than Warwind, but you get Warwind for free, so you might as well have Sudden Death. The next talent choice is Stormbolt and Shockwave. Now the reason you go Shockwave versus a combat rogue over a Assassination or a Subtlety rogue is because Shockwave will then stun his Shadow Reflection as well as himself. Now that's a really good way of keeping the reduced damage off you at the start. Now you want to go Stormbolt versus Assassination and Subtlety because you want to be able to stun them as often as you can. The 75 talent here is null and void because it doesn't work in duels. The next talent you want to go for is Bladestorm, and the reason you go Bladestorm over Avatar and Bloodbath is if you pop Avatar, you're pretty much not going to get any damage because they have evasions, and if you pop Bloodbath, the same reason you're not going to get much damage because they have evasions. Plus you have Rend, so you don't need Bloodbath for the bleed. Now the reason you want to go Bladestorm is because a lot of the times rogues will try to lock you down in a lot of stuns, and Bladestorm will help prevent that. Bladestorm allows you to be immune to all CC at any times. You can also use it to immune blinds if you can predict the blind, if you're good enough to do that. But I feel Bladestorm is an all-around better choice because it allows you to kite away, and most rogues will generally try to 1 or they will pop some defensives to keep you from doing damage to them, but really you're using this to make sure that you get some of the defensives out of them, as well as making sure you're not stunned and locked down and killed. Anger Management is a no-brainer out of the other 2, and the reason you want to go Anger Management is because obviously a quicker Bladestorm and a quicker Stormbolt and a quicker everything in general is always a better choice, especially with Heroic Leap. And the reason you want Heroic Leap to be a quicker cooldown is because you're going to be glyphing for a certain ability in a second, which I'll show you, which is why we should get straight into the glyphs now. Okay, so let's get straight into the glyphs. The first glyph you're going to want to use is Glyph of Rallying Cry. And you want to use Rallying Cry because it gives 20% leech, which is really nice, and also when you do damage to the target, it also heals you as well. So this is like a 40% in heal when you're actually taking a lot of damage from the rogue. And if you can put this with Bladestorm, you will find that you will actually get a lot of health back because the rogue's generally going to try and run. It's going to try to use defensives and stuff like that. So it's a good way to keep yourself alive. I also feel that this glyph works really well with Enrage Regen if you can get the 2 to work together, but sometimes the rogues open really strong and you're not going to get a chance to use your Enrage Regen later, so you have to use it early in the opener. But it's all good in the end, either way it doesn't matter. The next glyph is Bull Rush, and you want to use Bull Rush because you want to have that additional rage, and you're going to be able to charge more often because of Glyph and Death from Above, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, 15 rage is always an extra good thing versus rogues. And the last thing you want to use is Glyph of Death from above. Now this is not going to be the glyph you're going to use versus combat rogues, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the reason you're going to want to use it against subtlety rogues and assassination rogues is because subtlety rogues and assassination rogues generally will not kite you, and they will generally keep you into a distance, and this will allow you to effectively get more Warbringers in because of that, because you're going to expect for anger management, which gives you more chances of getting your cooldown reduced on heroic leap. So you get around 20 something second leaps, which is going to allow you to get more Warbringers off, effectively reducing the damage you take by quite a lot. Now the reason you're not going to want to use this against combat rogues is because combat rogues have a thing called killing spree, and the reason you want to use that is because sometimes you may not have your fear, you may not have your stun ready for when they use killing spree, and if this happens and you have your heroic leap ready, if you actually leap 40 yards away from the rogue, the killing spree will be interrupted and stopped, therefore reducing the damage you take by quite a lot. And if you need extra healing, you can also go for the Glyph of Mortal Strike. Okay, so in this first duel versus Senses, I'm going to have a pre-setup, and what that pre-setup is defensive stance and commanding shout. And the reason defensive stance is 20% reduced damage from all the incoming attacks, as well as when every time the rogue's going to reopen you, you want to be in defensive stance, therefore reducing the damage you take. Same with commanding shout. Commanding shout is going to give you more health, therefore increasing your percentage based heals, being rallying cry and enrage regen. So in this first duel, Senses is currently Assassination spec, which means that once he pops Vendetta, he's most likely going to use Death from above, taking a big chunk of my health. I need to watch out for this, and when he does that, I need to trinket any stuns and pop dive with a sword, therefore reducing that attacks and incoming damage. At the start, he just sat me into a full cheap shot. I do see Vendetta go on me, so I tried to trinket into a double sword, but I'm way too late. Instead, I decided to Stormbolt and per rend and pop my full cooldown to try force him to blind me. He does blind me, and because of the bleed, he can't get a full restealth now. He's also used combat readiness during this blind, so he's not using that to its full potential. He just sat me here, and I use a Blade Storm out of it immediately after the enrage to force him to use Vanish, which then keeps him in combat. The bleed is still on him. I use Heroic Throw, charge back over, tried to re-rend, but I was too late. He has got full cooldowns now, but I'm in defensive stance, so that was good with me to keep myself in defensive stance. I can't rend him here, so I decided to fear him instead, because rending is important in keeping it on the rogue to keep him in combat, so he can't restealth quite often. I do leap out here and I charge back in, trying to keep him in combat. I do have a Stormbolt now, I do use that. Instead, and he does trinket, so I try to double the sword here and make sure I get a rend on him before I do that, so I can keep him in combat, and it is basically just the end of the duel now. I should go into defensive stance right now, but I don't, and I do get an ass clenching opener here, and I should have been in defense stance, reducing all that damage, but I do have rallying cry coming up, and I do use that straight away, and I managed to get the execute and finish off the duel. Things I could have done better in that duel was I could have been in defensive stance before that last stun, therefore reducing damage taken. I also could have made sure that I used that with a sword and trinket a bit earlier than what I did at the start of the duel. And I also should have made sure that I got the full rend on the target. I could have feared as I charged, therefore allowing me to get the full rend before he actually got that second kidney shot. But I feel like I did a good job and I managed to get the win. So in this next duel, Senses is currently Subtlety spec, so I'm expecting a big ass clenching opener. Subtlety does have a lot of burst and it's definitely pretty strong in the good sense. So he does set me off at the start and he's going to open most likely with a Shadow Dance opener. And he does, he has everything proc ready to go. He's taking a big chunk of my health into a death from above. I do manage to get a rend on the target here like usual, starting off the duel. Now I decide to fear off there at the start because I'm losing all the damage he's taken during his evasion. I do Heroic Throw back in here and charge back in. I do Stormbolt off this, but he does Smoke Bomb before I get the Stormbolt. I do hit the Stormbolt off, and the reason I Thunderclap was to slow him down so he couldn't get to me. I do Blade Storm to stop him here, so make sure I can't get any reduced damage taking on me. I do have a bleed on him and he's not going to get back in combat. He does blind me while I hit him with a Heroic Throw. He still has the bleed on him, so he might have to reopen here, which is good of me. You just get a full reopener and you never trinket the cheap shot, always trinket the kidney shot, guys. I don't decide to trinket this time because I feel like I'm okay. I have double the sword and rend on target and he's already blinding me at this point. I feel like I'm in a good spot. He just reopened here. I decided to Stormbolt him here, pop my full cooldowns and managed to get the kill. And that's generally how you beat a Subtlety rogue. Subtlety rogues aren't as difficult to defeat as other rogues, but definitely a challenge in the sense. I feel like I played this perfectly. There's nothing I did wrong in this duel. I felt that maybe Senses probably should have waited for my double sword before he blinded, but either way it's all good and the duel was pretty decent. So here in this next duel, Senses is currently combat spec, and I feel like I made quite a lot of mistakes versus combat, and you guys are going to see how quickly this duel is. I will point out all my mistakes and things I could have done to improve on this duel and done a lot better. So before we start this duel, I just wanted to point out a few things. Things I learned from dueling Senses as combat is I should be Shockwave versus a combat rogue, and I also should be Warbringer versus a combat rogue. I also need to Shockwave his Shadow Reflection and him at the very start of the opener, and Shockwave his killing spree or leap 40 yards on his killing spree depending on which one is available, because Stormbolt doesn't allow you to target it and only Fear, Leap and Shockwave can save you from this. I did not do any of that in this duel, as you guys will see. So here at the start I'm in my usual commanding shout defensive stance. He just sacked me off here at the start and he just opened pretty hard with Shadow Reflection. I decided to trinket this and fear him off at the start. I should have Shockwave, but I don't have Shockwave, I have Stormbolt instead. So I decided to Stormbolt and I get a rend on the target like usual. I Blade Storm into defensive stance, which is good by me. He does have to pop his combat readiness here. I do kite this a bit and he does smoke bomb, which is really good at him. A heroic leap in, which is bad because you're going to see in a moment why I need that heroic leap. He does have combat readiness up still, so I decided to die with the sword. But I did manage to cluster smash, which put me into battle stance, which means I'm going to take a shit more damage, which is really bad for me. He does hit me at the full cheap shot here, and there's nothing I can do about that because I'm in a stun and I'm just locked out completely, taking so much damage. Lost most of my health into an evasion here, so I decided to Stormbolt that evasion, go behind him and pop cooldowns. I took a big chunk of his health off, which is nice, but he still has evasion up, so there's not much you can do with that. He does spree, which I could have leaped here if I hadn't used the leap, so I take the full damage of that spree, and there's nothing I can do about that. My leap comes off cooldown right now, so I do leap in, charge back in. I do have more CDs left right now, and he does finish off the duel. I feel like I could have done better by using that leap a little bit later than what I did, and that probably would have won that duel if I had done so. So things we want to take away from these duels is, always remember to keep your rend on the target at all times. Use Blade Storm at moments when you feel like you're going to be locked down and wrecked in seconds. Make sure you use Fear at moments when you can't get an opener from like things like evasion, or on things like that you may take incoming damage from like a killing spree from a rogue. Also make sure you use Shockwave versus combat rogues because that's most important, and I did not realize that until I finished these duels. Shockwave is very important versus combat, Stormbolt is very important versus assassination and subtlety. Make sure you always trinket big deadly openers if you think you're going to take a shit ton of damage. Otherwise, I wouldn't really bother so much against assassination or subtlety. Combat, you always have to trinket the opener, unfortunately. If you do not trinket, you will take a shit ton of damage. Only trinket though when you see Shadow Reflection, otherwise you're safe to sit the opener. Also make sure you use die by the sword after you've rendered the target, therefore when he does blind you, he has to reopen because you will have made sure that he can't get restalled, because rend lasts for 17 seconds. Make sure you only pop cooldowns when you think the rogue has used one of his evasions and you have a stun to lock him down and kill him like that. But all in all, I feel like the best way to make sure you do well against the rogue is make sure you're in defensive stance every time they reopen, because otherwise you will find yourself in a bad situation. Spare your cooldowns, don't be afraid to use enraged regen at the start of the opener. You will find it better if you use your enraged regen after 10% of your health is gone, because remember it does heal for 10% of your health. And also use Rallying Cry as your last defensive, because this way you will find that you might get enraged regen back after using it at the start of the opener. But in the end, rogues are definitely a tough class to beat, but make sure you use all these tips and tricks that I've shown you in this video and you will find yourself on the winning end of most rogue duels. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you found it very informative. The next one will be versus Shadow Priest, and I hope you guys all have a great day, and as always, this is Evylyn out. I love you all, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.